So, for the last 3 months, I've been daily driving the new Steelseries Apex Pro Mini. And it's my new favorite keyboard and daily driver for all of my daily tasks, including playing ARPG games. This is my dream keyboard, and it hits pretty much every single feature that I need, and then some. This is my keyboard of choice for the thousands of hours that I plan to put into Diablo 4 and Path of Exile, which, by the way, we have some more Diablo 4 content coming to the channel soon, so make sure that you're subscribed for that. Anyway, let's dive in right into the review. First, this is a compact 60% form factor. The 60% form factor is basically your standard keyboard minus the number pad, arrow keys, home keys, and function keys. As a result, you end up with a keyboard that has keys for the most important switches that you need. But what many people dislike about 60% keyboards is that rarely you might need to access the print screen key or function key like F5. SteelSeries solves this problem by including a meta key. That's the second key from the right here on the right side of the keyboard. While you press this key, you can access all of the regular keys that you can on a normal keyboard. And if you can't remember where the secondary functions are, SteelSeries side prints all of the secondary actions on their double shot PBT keycaps. This makes it easy for you to remember where print screen, home, page down, or media keys like volume up, down, and play pause are without needing to be the world's greatest touch typist. Now, one of the best parts of a 60% keyboard for gaming tech enthusiasts like you and me is that your left hand position is closer to a natural resting position with your right mouse hand. That extra comfort and natural positioning really is important for long gaming sessions, especially for ARPG players like us who sit down for these extremely long gaming sessions, grinding out level after level and monster drop after monster drop. At least on my desk, my mouse naturally rests about 1 foot or 12 inches away from the WASD keys. I like to call this distance my natural sort of a wingspan. And the wingspan this keyboard gives you can't really be beaten while also giving you access to a full standard QWERTY set. A 60% keyboard also does a better job sitting sort of in the middle of your desk. These days, I find that my desk needs to have room for many other accessories beyond just my keyboard and mouse. This includes my Stream Deck, my phone, wallet, water bottle, headset, and now that most modern ARPGs are supporting controllers, my PS5 or Xbox controller. This isn't taking into account all the extra gear that I have on my desk for streaming or making YouTube videos. I know this sounds like I'm making a whole bunch of fuss over what amounts to just an extra couple of inches on all sides of a full-size keyboard, but it really does make a huge impact on the desk. Now, after the form factor, the next thing that you'll immediately notice about the SteelSeries Apex Pro Mini is the incredible RGB. I've been using gaming keyboards for more than a decade, and let me tell you that the SteelSeries RGB is just brighter, more functional, and prettier than any other gaming RGB keyboard brand out there. Perhaps the best thing about the RGB is that it's easy to turn off. This is something that gaming keyboards a lot of times get wrong, and they forget that us gamers typically want to switch the keyboard into some kind of productivity mode during the day, you know, for when we're not playing a game. So just let me turn the dang RGB off, for goodness sake, sometimes. SteelSeries does make this really easy to do with their onboard configuration switcher or by using the SteelSeries engine software. Now, we'll get to talking about those features later in this review because they are great and they're really important to the overall customization of the keyboard. But just offhand, the choices that you can make between different behaviors of the RGB is incredible. Out of the box, the keyboard will default to this Vapor Dreams effect, which is pretty inoffensive and it's a slow color change. It's really nice in the eyes. But you can change this to any single color you want, or you can customize it on your own with your own behavior using color shift. Or you can use one of the presets. They have Vaporwave, West Coast, Haze, Prism, Chasing Ghosts, or a really interesting one here, Warp Drive. Probably the most important piece of the RGB is that you can tie in the different behaviors and colors to different key profiles on the keyboard, allowing you to set up different key bindings for, say, Path of Exile 2 and Diablo 4. And then that helps you understand when you switch between different profiles on which one you are in based on the color that you've created and the behavior that you've customized for that color. One unique use case that I have for my particular setup is that I run multiple PCs. So I actually run a USB switcher between my two different PCs, my gaming PC and my streaming/productivity PC. And not only do I have multiple different profiles set up for my gaming PC for different games, but I also have a unique profile for my productivity PC that switches automatically when I use the USB switcher. It's a really incredible way at a glance to know which PC my peripherals are currently attached to, and it saves me from needing two sets of keyboards and mice. It also saves my eyes a little bit during the day when I'm just doing sort of like my regular work and I need to be more productive. I don't have all this RGB glare in my face all the time. Ultimately, the RGB here for Steelseries is beautiful, and they've done a great job making it functionally useful for different games and productivity use cases. Okay, so now let's talk about these keycaps. These are double shot PBT keycaps, and importantly, the lettering is transparent, which allows that beautiful RGB to shine right through. Now, some keyboard enthusiasts will say I'm wrong here, but I'm a fan of the centered lettering on these keycaps, along with the standard capital lettering across all of them. It's done in a simple sans serif font, and that makes it easy to read at a distance. Now, I'm a 100% touch typist, but for some folks, being able to read the keys a little bit easier can be important for speed. I guess the best part of that is that the font is nice and large, which also has the side effect of making the total transparent area for the RGB larger too. At the same time, the keycaps aren't completely translucent and ridiculously garish, and the choice of black here for the default is appreciated for no other reason than it does a good job of hiding dirt and smudges and oil from my disgusting human meat gamer hands. Now, if you want to go absolutely crazy, Steelseries also makes these prism caps, which you can buy for an additional $30 USD. They come in three colors: black, pink, and white. The main difference with these prism caps here is that the edges of all the keys are in a translucent color, so that the RGB of your keyboard really goes nuts. Personally, I find the default matte black keys here the best, but it's great that they do offer something to turn your keyboard into an absolute clown fiesta if you so desire. Now, let's head to the back of the keyboard. First, this keyboard has some of the best height adjustable tilt legs that I've seen on a standard size keyboard. The legs open with a satisfying click and have a wide base, giving just a bit of extra stability compared to similar keyboards. That extra stability means that if you find yourself using the tilt legs, you're highly unlikely to break these off like you might on a cheaper Dell keyboard or something. Now, I don't use the legs with this keyboard. I'm personally more in team flat keyboard, and this keyboard already has a built-in angle to the aluminum case, so I find that using the tilt legs is wholly unnecessary. The plastic here, though, does tuck in nicely if you don't use these legs, and Steelseries includes 4 wide squishy rubber grommets on the bottom, which are quite wide and provide that just extra smidge of stability and sound dampening on your desk. Now, you may have noticed this small area in the middle of the back of the keyboard, and Steelseries does include a small keyboard key puller tool here. But personally, I really like this as an extra stash space for 2 extra SD cards, which is super useful for me as a YouTuber, instead of kicking these like very expensive SD cards that can get really lost really easily around my desk. Now, thankfully, this is an extremely modern keyboard, and it includes a USB-C plug to power it. The cable is fully detachable, which allows you to use whichever cable that you want. The included cable is also quite a nice high-quality braided cable that's USB-C to USB 3.0, and it's somewhat flexy too. I actually prefer the included cable rather than a more aesthetic cable like one from CableMod because it takes up so little space on my desk. Of course, the great thing here is that you have the option to customize with any USB-C cable you wish, and the simple layout to plug it in makes that possible. I also really appreciate that the plug is raised off the desk and that it plugs directly into the case. I can fit about 1 finger underneath the plug here on my desk. That gives it just that extra space to make sure that it's not dragging or has any additional friction on your desk that might allow you to plug in maybe somewhat a more esoteric cable if that's more your style. Oh yeah, I guess I should also mention here that Steelseries does offer a Bluetooth and wireless version of this keyboard for about $60 USD more at the $240 USD price point. But come on. If you're buying this keyboard, you are certainly buying it for its maximum response time, and nobody wants to deal with Bluetooth latency or connectivity on a high-performance keyboard like this. All right, let's briefly talk about the case. This is a very well-made aluminum alloy case and top plate, which gives it a fantastic heft and really lets it sit on your desk with some true weight. You're not going to really knock this easily around. And my favorite part of this case is that the front part, at least, is magnetic, which allows SteelSeries' own wrist rests from other SteelSeries keyboards to work on it, albeit with a little bit of an overhang here. One of my gripes here is that SteelSeries does not include a magnetic wrist rest for this keyboard that's appropriately sized, like they do with the full-sized Apex series keyboards. And I think that's a little bit odd. I'm actually using the SteelSeries Apex 7/Apex Pro palm rest with this keyboard, and it does work, although this has the annoying side effect that this part sticks out on the side. Now, you could easily buy a wrist rest off of a third-party website like Amazon for 20 or 30 bucks, but the magnetic and built-in nature of the SteelSeries one just feels better and more cohesive to me. SteelSeries, if you're watching this video, can you please make a appropriately sized magnetic wrist rest for the Apex Pro Mini? I think it just would be a fantastic value add for an already incredible keyboard. All right, now everything we've talked about so far makes for an exceptional keyboard, but for $180 USD, I think you're gonna have a hard time convincing people to buy a premium gaming keyboard at the 60% form factor. But this keyboard is different than, frankly, anything that you've used before. And the killer feature here is that this keyboard uses a magnetic mechanical switch. Now, SteelSeries calls this their OmniPoint 2.0 switch. And if you've read the marketing, it makes it sound like a completely new innovation. But actually, these mechanical keyboard switches use something called the Hall effect, which uses a magnetic field with a conical spring for physical resistance to engage the key press. And while there are some keyboards with this mechanism that date all the way back to the 1970s, at the time, the manufacturing costs for these kinds of keyboards was extremely expensive, so they never really caught on in popularity. But now, Hall effect mechanical keyboard switches are popping up in enthusiast spaces. But what's really interesting is that this keyboard, the SteelSeries Apex Pro Mini, is one of the first to really include it in a mass market keyboard. So first, these OmniPoint 2.0 switches are hands down the best mechanical switch I've ever typed on. I've typed on a lot of keyboards over the years. This is a fast linear switch with a medium to light resistance. The spring has great feedback without clicking and clacking and making a loud racket. It's probably one of the quietest mechanical keyboards that I've ever used, and while the OmniPoint 2.0s are a fast linear switch, before now I've never really liked linear switches like Reds because they have this mushy feel at the bottom of them. In my opinion, these also beat out browns and clears due to the faster response time. Now, the switch feel is a surprisingly personal thing, and I think if you get 100 different gamers in a room, they will have 100 different opinions about switch preference. And customizability here is something that these OmniPoint switches do that no other switch can do until now. And that's because these switches are controlled through a magnetic effect, which you can actually change programmatically the actuation point on the key itself. So SteelSeries lets you do this on the Apex Pro Mini through their SteelSeries engine software, and you can change the actuation point of the keyboard all the way from 0.2 millimeters up to 3.8 millimeters. If you need to have that really high actuation point for some reason, you can do that. But wait, it actually gets better than that, because these switches can sense the key depth all the way from 0.2 millimeters to 3.8 millimeters. You can program each individual key to have up to 2 different actions at different key depths. At the very basic, you could say program a key to walk your character at a shallow key depth and to sprint or run when the key is all the way pressed in. And for MMO or ARPG players, this offers you incredible versatility in your keyboard setup and lets you access spells or actions that you might not use very often on one key. I think ultimately this is probably a much better option than sticking 30 buttons on the side of your mouse like a Razer Naga or something. The unique feel of the OmniPoint 2.0 switch is really the killer feature of this keyboard. And frankly, I think if you got this into a gamer's hands, that they fly off the shelves instantly. But it gets even better. Let's talk about durability and performance. So first, because this is a magnetic switch, there's a lot less physical contact and friction going on, meaning that the switch itself is going to last you a long time. Steelseries themselves say that the switches are rated for 100 million key presses, but I think that's actually because their testing apparatus just simply isn't capable of testing these switches or breaking them for the billions and billions of presses that are required to break them. In reality, these switches might actually last you up to 10 billion key presses. Heck, this might be the last keyboard you actually buy from a durability perspective. The only maintenance you're really going to have to do on this thing is your standard biannual dust, brush, and vacuum, and hit it with a microfiber from time to time. The open floating key switch design also has the side effect of making it easier to clean, and it also keeps these minor liquid spills that you might have from getting into the interior of the case, although this isn't a waterproof keyboard in any sense, so of course don't go throw this in a bathtub. Now, in terms of actual long-term durability, I won't be able to tell you that for perhaps, another 10 years or so from now, but I can tell you that at least since this landed on my desk 3 months ago, it's handled like a champ. Aside from some dust, the keyboard looks and operates exactly the same as when it came out of the box. Now, the performance of the OmniPoint 2.0 switch also has a huge advantage over a traditional mechanical switch because it avoids debounce delay. Now, what is debounce delay, you ask? Well, to put it simply, when you press a mechanical switch, a standard mechanical switch, you end up actually contacting the switch many times for each key press. This is a problem that keyboard manufacturers have to take into account, so traditional mechanical keyboards simply filter out these extra contacts by including a delay before the actuation of the next key press can occur. But with a keyboard that's based around the Hall effect, this extra filtering isn't required as much, and the precision of the switch is much higher. As a result, a Hall effect or a magnetic-based switch has a lower trigger latency than a traditional mechanical keyboard. The keyboard itself is dependent on Steelseries software called Steelseries GG. Now, you can use the keyboard without the software installed, but that means that you're going to give up that extra amount of customization and key change that you're going to get with the software. Now, SteelSeries Engine 3 works on both Windows and Mac OS. I use both of these operating systems on a daily basis, so I've tested this software for a while now. Still, building software is really hard, and I'd say the weakest point of any gaming keyboard on the market right now is keeping updates for firmware and for the software going. The other trick here is that if you like using a different gaming peripheral, something like a Corsair or Razer maybe, you might have to install multiple pieces of software for maximum functionality, which is always really annoying. Personally, I have standardized on SteelSeries over the years to benefit from a single ecosystem instead of multiple ecosystems. I guess one underutilized aspect of SteelSeries GG is that it has custom integration with certain games, including Dota 2, CSGO, Minecraft, and League of Legends, and so on. So if you're a game developer, in theory, you could provide custom support for players that use SteelSeries products, say, to change the colors on their keyboard when something in the game happened through SteelSeries API. So, for example, in CSGO, they gave the example that if you get flashbanged, your keyboard might flash white. But I doubt most people are really using the software for this. In fact, the most useful part of the software, especially for us ARPG players, is that it provides a built-in macro system. This is super handy for reducing RSI and keeping your hands in good shape when playing for very, very long periods of time. For example, in Diablo 3, using a POJ Tempest Rush build that has you hold down the Tempest Rush button for the entire time that you're moving the character, that can really grate on your hands. If you do this for hours and hours, your hands are going to be hurting. With SteelSeries Engine, you could map this to a button toggle instead. So in other words, the button, instead of holding it down, it behaves like a light switch. That way you can activate and deactivate the ability more flexibly. Of course, this comes with the gameplay trade-off of a less responsive on-off for Tempest Rush itself when you're playing the game, but honestly, it's probably worth it for keeping your hands in better shape if you're holding the button down for hours and hours every day. The software also allows you to customize up to 5 configurations that live on board the keyboard itself, so that if you're going to an event, a friend's house, or if you just play on a different PC, you can carry your customizations with you. So if you get used to a particular key layout, or if you find something more ergonomically better for you, you can really push the customization to the next level, and you can keep that muscle memory with you at all times. Overall, the SteelSeries Apex Pro Mini is just an excellent keyboard, and there's a good chance that it's going to be on my desk for the next 10 years. I give it a 9 out of 10, and if it came with an appropriately sized wrist rest, it would straight up be a 10 out of 10. Good luck to anybody else in the gaming peripheral space. This is the final boss of keyboards, and it's going to be really tough to beat. Anyway, that's it for this one. Tell me, what's your current keyboard down in the comments, and tell me why you like it. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.